This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever think about switching insurance companies to see if you could save some cash? Progressive makes it easy. Just drop in some details about yourself and see if you're eligible to save money when you bundle your home and auto policies. The process only takes minutes, and it could mean hundreds more in your pocket. Visit Progressive.com after this episode to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states.
Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Attack the Baseline, a WNBA podcast where every episode we attack our baseline knowledge of the WNBA. On today's episode, we're going to begin the thing that we had to throw in the trash last week when Diana Taurasi retired, our defunct team series. And this week we will be checking out the Portland Fire and the Cleveland Rockers, two teams that used to be in the WNBA that are basically returning to the WNBA. So we're going to learn a little bit about some of their history, their career projections for both of the organizations, where they succeeded and where they failed, and learn a good bit about some of the players that were known commodities on those franchises. Basically, we feel like we need to learn some history when it comes to the WNBA. We do not have a lot of that background knowledge, so I'm going to be telling Kristen about some of these new players that she's never heard of, and I'm looking forward to, or I've never heard of them.
I could have, you don't know that.
Maybe, and we're gonna find out. But before we get into that, Kristen, how's it going?
Good, I'm great.
You're great?
Yep, ready to learn.
Ready to learn?
Okay.
Well, I'm excited that you want to learn because, especially in the case of the Cleveland Rockers, there are a lot of things to talk about. A little less for the Portland Fire, which was around half as long. Mm-hmm. But we'll start getting into that in a little bit. If you're new to the podcast, welcome. Every week we're attacking our baseline knowledge of the WNBA. As I said, you can reach out to us if you'd like to at our email, attackthebaseline@gmail.com, or you could connect with us on Bluesky or Instagram at ATBPod. We're there, as I said, posting about Unrivaled, posting about the WNBA, posting about free agency and the draft, and posting about women's college basketball. I would like to say that, just very briefly, there was a big game between USC and UCLA to decide which team is the best in Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. And it was the last day of the regular season in women's college basketball. You didn't see the whole game. I watched the whole game. Mm-hmm. I feel like every time we get these like really high leverage, like low seeds, the 2 versus the 4 in this case, in the college rankings, they end up being kind of snooze fests. And unfortunately, last night's USC versus UCLA matchup, Lauren Betts versus Juju Watkins, was kind of a snoozer.
Yeah, there was so much hype going into this game, compared to like also so much hype when it was the UConn South Carolina game a couple weeks ago.
Blowout.
That also was a blowout and kind of boring. So yeah, it's weird. I'm interested to see how the standings move, because I feel like they should.
Well, yeah, I think
not the standings, the rankings. Yeah. Because like, how can UCLA be higher than USC when they've lost twice to USC?
Well, yeah, they won't be. They definitely will not be. I think USC should be the one after this, because UCLA lost 2 games all season, and they lost both of them to USC, and it cost them their conference. Yeah. Which is pretty fascinating. Juju Watkins is the player of the year, the national player of the year. Not confirmed, but will be the national player of the year. Living up to all of the hype that she's gotten. She was incredible this game. And UCLA at home just didn't get it going. And it was kind of crazy. There was a moment where it was 55-50 USC over UCLA, where I thought UCLA had figured it out, but then USC went on like a 7-0 run, pushed it back to 12, and then the game was over.
Yeah.
Didn't even need a ton of Kiki. It was really Juju being all over the floor. She's going to be a heck of a powerhouse when she gets into the WNBA. That is a couple years down the road. We still have a lot of college, but I mean, we're going to get into, as we prepare for the tournament, we're going to have a couple episodes about what's happened in this season of women's college basketball, as well as who we expect to be some of the better matchups or better the teams just going into the bracket, who have the best shot to win. And we're going to get into all of that. I'm excited about that. But look forward to that down the road. Bring it back to the topic at hand, our defunct teams. Mm-hmm. I would like to start with the Portland Fire, as we know that Portland will be returning to the WNBA in 2026. Do you have any baseline about the Portland Fire? 2026.
Okay.
Yes. They'll be joining with Toronto. But do you know anything about the Portland Fire before we talk about them?
No.
Great.
I don't think.
Clean slate. Clean slate.
I don't think.
Let's start from the top. The Portland Fire. Describe to our fans the logo of the Portland Fire.
The letters are good. Black letters with a yellow shadow, and then kind of like a red highlight. I like the letters. Mm-hmm. The basketball just looks like MS Paint.
Okay, MS Paint.
The fire is just flat red.
Do you think that fire is supposed to be an F? It kind of has like 3 prongs, but I think it's supposed to be an F.
Yeah, F with hair.
A hairy F.
F with the flame.
Yeah. And it makes sense. The Portland team in the NBA was the Trail Blazers, so they said blaze, fire, close enough. The team is actually named after a big fire that occurred in Portland that I was unaware of in 1873. So I guess like kind of the Chicago fire equivalent in Portland, one that burned a lot of the city. Mm-hmm. But that's really the reason why they're called the Fire.
I feel like there's been a fire in every city.
I'm sure there has been. I mean, there's been at least one fire, but probably at least one major fire in all the big cities.
Yeah.
So they joined the W as an expansion team in 2000, and they were around until 2002.
Yeah, that makes me upset.
Why?
It makes me upset that they're getting an expansion team back when they were only around for 2 years. Okay, so continue.
Do you have any idea? Do you think, we don't know for sure. It's interesting that the news comes out about Cleveland and they're like, they're going to be the Rockers. Mm-hmm. And, Toronto comes out and we get the name, the Tempo. They didn't have a team. Do you think Portland's just going to be the Fire again?
I guess.
Because it seems like they're kind of going back to the well. Was Portland one of the 4 teams that they purchased the rights to their logo? I don't think that was...
I don't remember.
There was a news story where the WNBA recently purchased the rights to several of the defunct teams, and it made people think that those defunct teams were just going to be the de facto teams that are getting expansion squads. Pretty sure it's just so that they can sell merch, like throwback merch.
Yeah.
But I don't believe Portland was one of the 4. So we're still like kind of in this limbo of like what their team name is going to be when they come back. I always felt like the Portland Rose felt good, but now that the Rose is an unrivaled team, I don't know if they're going to do that. Mm-hmm. So Portland ? Teams coming to. I would guess
it's just Fire again.
Yeah, I think I would agree.
Because preview for when we eventually do a Houston Comets podcast, there's currently a bid out to do an expansion team in Houston, and they would be the Comets again.
Right.
So it seems like they just are doing what they did before.
Just bring it back. Okay, so we start at the high level. The organization was owned by Paul Allen, who was the owner of the Blazers, as we've learned in the history going back. A lot of these NBA franchises just bought WNBA franchises and then were owned by the same guy. They had one coach and GM, the same woman, did both. Linda Hargrove, who, yeah, like I said, the same woman for 3 years. She went on to actually be the GM of the Mystics for a brief stretch, 2005, 2008. So she had some of a career arc, but, not a ton of success, obviously, with the team folding. And they played in the Rose Garden. That was the name of the arena.
Okay.
Which is why I thought Rose would be pretty apt. Same place that the Blazers played, which is now called the Moda Center. Mm-hmm. Kind of an ugly name, but...
It's a company.
Right. They're always companies. So, 2000, turn of the millennium. They join, and they stink immediately. In their first season, they go 10-22. And
That's not the worst they could have done.
They were second worst to, I believe it was the Sparks that year, by only like a game. Mm-hmm. So, just bad. Their initial roster featured the following 5 players, who we're going to learn a little bit about. Sophia Witherspoon, Sylvia Crawley, Stacey Thomas, Vanessa Nygaard, and Tuli Bevilacqua. Mm-hmm. So, these are our starting 5. We'll start with the guard, Sophia Witherspoon.
Witherspoon, you're saying?
Witherspoon, not Weatherspoon.
Okay.
She was their biggest bucket getter. She averaged in the opening season 16.8 points per game, 2.1 assists, 3 total rebounds, 0.3 blocks, 1.2 steals. Pretty decent player, 37% three-point shooter. She won a championship in 2002 with the Sparks, a year after she left the Fire. So she was there for the Fire for the first 2 years of the organization. She leaves, she goes to the Sparks. She gets a championship immediately after.
To the Sparks that were the worst record of this year.
Correct. And they turned it around. Next, we look at forward center Sylvia Crawley. Really, the only thing notable that I found about Sylvia Crawley was that she was an assistant coach of the Fever in 2014. It's interesting, you find a lot of these older players in, between this team and with Cleveland, that a lot of them did a little coaching work occasionally. Some of them head coaches, some of them assistant coaches. But that was really the main note about Sylvia Crawley. She was an 11.5 point scorer. She led the team in rebounds, 6. Nothing particularly notable, but a double-digit scorer, pretty good. Stacey Thomas leaves, similarly to Witherspoon, leaves the Fire after the last season that the Fire are around in 2002, goes to the Mercury, and wins a championship.
When?
In 2003, the next year. So it's funny because you have Sophie leaving, going to the Sparks, wins a championship. You have Stacey leaving, going to the Mercury, wins a championship.
So they have good players.
But yeah.
Some, at least.
Some, yeah.
Okay.
Which is funny. And then you look at Vanessa Nygaard, who played with the Rockers, the Fire, and the Soul. She played with all these defunct teams.
That's funny.
And she actually was the head coach of the Mercury in 2022, 2023.
Oh.
Before Nate Tibbetts. Mm-hmm. So that was a name that I noticed, and I was like, I think I've heard that one. Mm-hmm. And there you go. Sure enough, head coach. Pretty cool. And she didn't really do a lot in between the time that she was done in the W and becoming the head coach of the Mercury, but there you go. And last but not least, Tuli Bevilacqua wins a championship with the Storm in 2004. So you have 3 of these players in the starting 5. One win in 2002, 1 win in 2003, 1 win in 2004.
Well, good for them.
Bevilacqua had a 14-year W career. She was an assistant coach with the Mercury in 2023 under Vanessa Nygaard.
Cute.
Yep. And was an assistant coach on the Fever last season in 2024.
Oh, is she still?
It doesn't appear to be because they have all that new staff.
Yeah.
I was looking around. I did not see her name on the organization's list. So Tuli, not sure what she's out there doing now, but I think of the 5 of them, she was the one with the longest career inside the W. It's interesting when I was, because I did this first and then Cleveland, and then I noticed she's like at the bottom of the Cleveland rosters, and I'm like, that's Tuli. Now I know Tuli.
Could it be Tully?
It could be Tully. You think it's Tully?
I don't know. You're the one who looked these people up.
Yeah, but that doesn't necessarily tell you how to pronounce. If it's Tully Bevilacqua, my apologies. I'm not going to go back and edit myself saying Tully 50 times to get to Tully.
Okay.
So that brings us to 2001. 2001, they bring in a hotshot rookie, Jackie Stiles. Jackie Stiles enters the team as a promising rookie. She actually wins Rookie of the Year. She led the team in scoring. She averaged 15 points a game. Their starting five had a couple new faces. So Kristen Fokel, who there was no facts about her. No facts about Kristen Fokel. But Jackie Stiles, as I mentioned, is this impressive rookie who leads the league in leads the team in scoring. But they only improved by one game, 11-21. They go second worst in the W again.
Dang.
And what's worth noting about Jackie Stiles is that she was inducted into the Women's Basketball Hall of Fame in 2016, but mostly based off of her NCAA accolades. She was the original point leader before Kelsey Plum broke her record in 2017. And then who broke Kelsey's record?
Caitlin. Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting that, like, Jackie Stiles, never heard of her because I just didn't pay attention to that, but she was like this major figure. And yeah, a Women's Basketball Hall of Famer, which is different than the Naismith Hall of Fame, but still like a very important figure around women's basketball.
Can I pause you for a second?
Sure.
I had a brain blast.
Brain blast.
As we're going through this, I am curious if these couple teams that came into the W after the initial, how was it, 8? After the initial 8, did any of them win a championship? That's something I want to look up.
The expansion teams.
Yeah. Because the initial 8 teams, like, I'm thinking these players seem pretty good. They went to other teams and won. This rookie seems like a great player. Why couldn't they keep up? Well, probably because those original 8 teams had that elite draft of players. Like, the best players in the world were handpicked and put on each of those original 8.
Right.
And then they had
A rookie draft.
they had another draft of talent, and then they had a rookie draft.
Right. Oh, right. Yeah. Two levels or 3 levels of drafting.
So, like, those original 8 teams, I feel like were much better set up than these expansions.
Right.
So they're just like, makes sense to me that they're just not going to perform, not going to be able to keep up.
Well, I can tell you that Portland does not win a championship as we go into their last year in the WNBA. They are actually the only franchise in WNBA history to never make a playoff. They never, ever do it, which is sad. And maybe they will when they come back.
Well, they didn't have much of a chance.
Correct. I think that's a very good point by you. So looking at the final year of the Portland Fire's existence in 2002, they do the best that they had in their 3 seasons. They end the season 16-16. So they improve a little bit.
So it was 3 seasons.
3 seasons. Yeah.
Okay.
2000, 2001, 2002. And they make a lot of changes. Their new starting 5, they actually like try a lot of different formulations with who gets starts. There are multiple players. I think 7 players that start at least 5 games. So they were trying to see what they could do, but I'm sure the writing was on the wall in the front office and around the league that like they're going to probably be bounced by the end of the season. So like who knows what decisions they were making. But the starting 5 primarily looks really different. A lot of new names. Akari Figs, Demaya Walker, Sylvia Crawley still there, steadfast, Tamika Jackson, and Elisa Burris. So really the only name that we're familiar with at this point is Sylvia Crawley. And you might say, like, where's Jackie Stiles? She was like this hotshot rookie. She won Rookie of the Year. while Jackie Stiles only ends up starting 3 games. She plays in 21 because she has these severe back injuries. She has 13 surgeries. And effectively, like, her career ends. After the Fire fold, she gets selected by the Sparks to join the Sparks. Never plays for the Sparks.
Aww.
And she's just done.
Wow, that's so sad.
So, like, it's kind of crazy to think about, like, what her career could have been if she wasn't dealing with this, because she was such a talented college player.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, she has to hang it up super early. And it's kind of interesting learning about some of these players from way back when, because some of them have very short WNBA careers. Even, like, modern W players get a couple seasons to get a chance. And usually I would imagine the average career is probably like 4 or 5 years, but some of these are like, it's 2 years and you're done. 3 years and you're done. And sometimes it's, circumstances like this with these back surgeries that keep you out of the game.
Dang.
But I'm sure they were excited. They had hope with how good Jackie was in her first season. And yeah. Only one player in this season averaged double figures. So that was the one that I felt like I wanted to check out. Demaya Walker. She carved herself out a pretty nice career after being on the Fire. She was in the W until 2013, and she won a championship in 2005 with the Monarchs. So it's so funny, like all these players connected to the Fire win in 2002, 2003, 2004, and 2005. Different organizations. Pretty neat. It's so sad because the Fire, like I said, went 16-16. They missed the playoffs by a game. Seattle went 17-15, right above them. So sad. Fire never get a chance to go for a championship. And ultimately, when they're folding, a couple of Trailblazer greats, Clyde Drexler and Terry Emmert, were trying to buy the organization. They were trying to become the new owners and keep the franchise running. And ultimately, they couldn't get it done.
Why?
There were financial challenges. Paul Allen, their perceived underperformance by how bad they were. He opted to let them dissolve, which is stupid.
Crazy.
And Clyde Drexler and Terry just couldn't get the deal done. They tried really hard, but they just couldn't. Which is, it's crazy to think about, like, active NBA players being like, please, we will buy it. And they're like, nah. And they just let it go.
What, like, number is this of team that folded? Is this the first team?
I think this is the first group of teams that fold, because I believe the Soul also fold the same year. So maybe they were like, oh, well, we know this. They puffed up too big, and then they were like, crap, we can't keep up. We need to shutter some of these teams or move some of these teams. But yeah, I'm pretty sure this is the first bounce. But obviously with the history of all the other all the other women's basketball leagues that popped up and went away that we talked about when we first started this podcast, it was just a difficult time then for a new team that was underperforming. So really, at the end of the day, the Fire are arguably the quietest franchise in WNBA history. They only last 3 seasons, and they're the only WNBA team to never make the playoffs in the history of their organization. Hopefully, with the new Portland team, the outlook will be brighter, and we'll see some positivity for them as they come back into the WNBA fold.
Sure. We wish better for them, of course.
I agree. We'll see. We'll see what happens in 2026.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. You chose to hit play on this podcast today. Smart choice. Progressive loves to help people make smart choices. That's why they offer a tool called Auto Quote Explorer that allows you to compare your Progressive car insurance quote with rates from other companies. So you save time on the research and can enjoy savings when you choose the best rate for you. Give it a try after this episode at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.
When you think about businesses that are selling through the roof, like aloe or Skims, sure, you think about a great product, a cool brand, and brilliant marketing. But an often overlooked secret is actually the businesses behind the business, making selling and for shoppers, buying simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. Nobody does selling better than Shopify. With Shop Pay, that boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning way less carts are going abandoned and way more sales happening. So if you're into growing your business, your commerce platform better be ready to sell whatever your customers are scrolling or strolling on the web, in your store, in their feed, and everywhere in between. Businesses that sell more sell on Shopify. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout Skims uses. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/Westwood1, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/Westwood1 to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/Westwood1.
O'Reilly. You need parts? O'Reilly Auto Parts has parts. Need them fast? We've got fast. No matter what you need, we have thousands of professional parts people doing their part to make sure you have it. Product availability. Just one part that makes O'Reilly stand apart. The professional parts people. O'Reilly Auto Parts.
So now we move on to talk about the Cleveland Rockers.
Yeah.
In the original episode where we talk about the history of the W and women's basketball really in general, Kristen said, and I quote, that the Cleveland Rockers are the worst franchise name that she's ever heard of. Mm-hmm. And I would like to give you the floor to express why you believe that, as they are now looking to come back into the W fold in 2028.
Yeah. Look, I understand why they're called the Rockers. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is in Cleveland. I've also heard basketballs referred to as the Rock.
Some people would say that that's the reason why.
It's a double meaning. Some could think that that's cool. I get it. To me, it's just so cringe of a thing to call a woman playing basketball. This has nothing to do with rock and roll. Yeah, I get we're in Cleveland. Mm-hmm. It's not related. And it's not like a concept of something like tempo, like liberty, like fire. I don't know. Those are like impactful words. Mm-hmm. This is like a different thing that's not related, and I just do not want to hear it.
Mm-hmm. I think it's just strange that they didn't end up doing anything related to the Cavs. I don't know what you would have necessarily done though, because Cavaliers are just like horse riders. So like
horse girls.
They could have been the Cleveland Horse Girls.
That would be cute.
That would have been good.
Rockers, not cute.
Horse girls,
cute.
Describe their logo.
You got a guitar, classic.
The R is a guitar.
See, to me, this is like Rocket Power.
Ooh.
That's what this reminds me of.
Uh-huh.
That is cringe. That is not
Rocket
now.
Power was cool then, though.
Yeah, then.
Right. You think they're going to bring back this old logo?
No
way.
They need to update it. Like, yeah, do a guitar to fit your theme. Fine. Like, you have to be so into this theme. If you're going to be rockers, I need every single thing to have guitar on it. You, like, really need to commit to this, or I'm not convinced that anyone likes it. It's fine.
It's kind of like it looks like it's on a guitar pick too, maybe? Is that what that's supposed to be? That, like, weird shape under the word rockers?
I guess so. I don't like the gray.
No.
I like the light blue.
Gray, light blue, black. No, not cute. Retool the colors, Cleveland, when it's your time to return. So the Cleveland Rockers. They were an organization from 1997 to 2003 when they folded. And they're coming back in 2028.
So the same year as the Fire.
The next year. Fire folded in 2002. The Rockers folded in 2003.
Okay.
They're one of the 8 original WNBA franchises named after the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. They had 2 different head coaches, Linda Hill McDonald from 1997 to 1999 and Dan Hughes from 2000 to 2003. They also had 2 different general managers, Wayne Embry, 1997 to 1999, and Jim Paxson until they folded in 2003. The high-level thing to note, Cheryl Reeve got her first assistant coaching gig in 2003 with the Cleveland Rockers. So the last year that they were around, Cheryl Reeve was there, which rules, because we know how good of a coach Cheryl Reeve is. So this is like her humble beginning. She starts with a team that doesn't even exist the next year. And I don't know the history of where she went around before she settled in Minnesota, but she's been with Minnesota forever. She honestly might have just gone right to Minnesota. Don't know for sure. But that's cool. At least Cleveland is connected to one of the greatest coaches in the history of the league.
True.
So we start in 1997. They played at the Gund Arena, which is the same place as the Cavs, and is now, as of February 18th, so like 2.5 weeks ago, has been changed to Rocket Arena.
Confusing.
It was called Rocket Mortgage Arena.
Yeah.
And now it's called Rocket Arena.
So
Cut
the
mortgage
Rockers...
out. The Rockers play at the Rocket.
No. Okay, continue.
Gross. Starting 5. Eva Nemkova, Janice Braxton, Michelle Edwards, Isabel Fiakowski, and Lynette Woodard. Those are our starting 5. Pretty decent. 4 out of the 5, the top 4 that I mentioned, all double-digit scorers. Lynette Woodard, one of the more interesting players of note in this whole episode. Can't wait to talk about her in a sec. The first season, they go 15-13. They only played 28 games first season. They were, and also in early WNBA, they had 2 conferences. They had the East and the West for the 8 teams. So only the top 2 and the top 2 made it from each conference. 15-13 record ended them 3rd in their conference. So they missed the playoffs, even though they would have been 2nd in the other conference. So if this was the way that the WNBA is now, they would have made the playoffs. Because if you look at the West, it was the Phoenix Mercury at the top of their conference, 16-12, and then 14-14 the Sparks go. And then the Monarchs were 10-18, and the Utah Stars were 7-21. So they were good, better, especially than Portland, compared to Portland, had a winning record. We look at some of these players that I just mentioned. Nemkova played 5 years with Cleveland. So up until the last couple years, she was with the team. She set the free throw record in 2000 with 66 consecutive made free throws.
Well,
Pretty solid. Pretty nice.
still standing.
As a matter of fact, it is still standing. It was almost broken by our GOAT, Elena Deladon, who went with 58 consecutive free throws. And it's funny because I remember that being a thing. Like ESPN talking about consecutive free throws for Elena Deladon. And she almost broke it. 66 is a lot. It's funny to think about, like...
58 is not almost 66.
I mean, that's probably one game for her. She could probably get 8 in a game.
I guess.
Elena Deladon would get to the line.
2 games.
But just to make that many, and like, so you would say, like, oh, I make that many in practice consecutively. But, like, when you're under pressure, you're bound to miss one out of 66. But Nemkova in 2000 sets that record. That still stands. Pretty tough one to break, in my opinion.
Okay.
And now we look at Janice Braxton, who was the Women's College Basketball Player of the Year in 1984. That was one of her main accolades. I know not WNBA, but she was a Player of the Year.
So she's older.
She was an older player, yeah, because you mentioned it. There's this, like, infusion draft of, like, the best older players in the world before, you know, these aren't all going to be rookies.
Yeah.
Are all going to be young. Didn't have a particularly interesting WNBA career. She was inducted into the Women's Basketball Hall of Fame in 2006, spurred on by her accolades from college. Michelle Edwards was the Women's College Basketball Player of the Year in 1988. So they have 2 of them in their starting 5.
Yeah. But that's 20 years before this.
Well, 10 years before this. It's 88, 1997.
Okay.
Also, didn't have a particularly interesting WNBA career. Was inducted into the Women's Basketball Hall of Fame in 2014, but also had to retire from the W in 2002 due to chronic foot injuries. So it's kind of sad. We have the Jackie Stiles situation. We have foot injuries for Michelle Edwards. Isabelle Fiakowski was a French center who only played 2 years in the W, but won a fair amount of international trophies. She was really, really good in Europe. Like, really, really good in Europe. She's a FIBA Hall of Famer. So, like, I guess, like, all of International Basketball Hall of Fame, that's probably more significant than the Women's Basketball Hall of Fame, I would think.
Yeah, probably.
Like a level up. Because FIBA is, like, how many other countries?
Right.
So, very short window that Isabel is in the W, but a very dominant player globally. And then Lynette Woodard, I mentioned this player to you as a player that I was excited about. She was the first female globetrotter. Pretty sick. You get a globetrotter on your team. She joined the W at 38 years old. She was one of the oldest players in the league. So she was doing globetrotting and then joins the W. It wasn't like she was in the W and they pulled her into the Globetrotters. So she was like doing trick shots. And then they're like, come play in Cleveland. That's pretty sick.
That is sick. I famously am more of a Harlem Wizards fan than a Harlem Globetrotters, just because the Wizards came to my summer camp when I was growing up.
Right. Not to be confused with the Washington Wizards.
No, this
It's like
is
another...
a Globetrotters-esque knockoff, I guess. The Harlem Wizards.
Right.
But that's cool.
It is pretty cool. And Woodard is the only player in Rockers history to make the Naismith Hall of Fame.
Okay, yeah.
So she's at the Basketball Hall of Fame, which we went to a couple years back. Didn't know her at the time, but when you're the first female Globetrotter, it makes sense that you'd be in the big Basketball Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
So, good for Lynette. Lynette does not continue into 1998. She's not around anymore. She hangs them up. And Tully's on the team. Mentioned her earlier, but she's not Tully.
Oh, Tully came here.
Yes. This is her, I believe this is her first, or maybe her first year was...
Tully was here and went to
Portland. Correct.
Okay.
But not a starting player. We look at a couple changes in the starting lineup. We see a new player in Susie McConnell-Serio. So a couple changes to the starting five. I'll focus on Susie Serio, who I thought this was a weather woman in Philadelphia named Sue Serio. Completely different lady. Thought that was funny. I was like, Susie Serio? Could it be? No. Unrelated. She went to Penn State. She grew up in Pittsburgh, so Pennsylvania, born and raised. Pretty cool. She coached for the Lynx from 2003 to 2006, and she actually won Coach of the Year in 2004.
Nice.
So, interesting mix for them. The Rockers went 20-10 this season. Pretty solid. Second best in all of the W. They actually won the Eastern Conference Finals, which I guess in that case was just they won the round that, because there were only 8 teams, so they got to go to the final, but they ended up losing to the Comets because the Comets were so dominant.
Don't spoil.
I won't say anything else. 1999, we see a pretty significant shift as they fall to a 7-25 record. So they're near the top, and then they're at the bottom.
What happened?
The worst team by 5 games. Similar starting 5, but really they only had 2 players that averaged double digits. They just had an all-around terrible year. They couldn't score the basketball. They couldn't win games. And now it was 32 games in a season. The season, it staggered. It went from 28 to 30 the season before. Now it's at 32. Just one of those seasons where, without digging into every single game, things just didn't go right in Cleveland, which prepares them for their 2000 year where they flip it back over and make the playoffs again. They add some new faces to this squad. that I'll get into. We'll talk a little bit more about. Chastity Melvin, Mary Andrade, and Rashia Brown. Let's start with Chastity, who is one of the starters that plays all 32 games that year. She was a forward who played in the W for 11 years. And before Vanessa Nygaard, who we talked about in the Portland Fire section, she was the head coach of the Mercury in 2021. So this Chastity Melvin, she coaches 1 year for the Mercury. Vanessa Nygaard coaches 2 years for the Mercury after that. And now we are at the present. So we're like slowly learning about the Mercury head coaches.
I also researched someone who was a head coach for the Mercury for like 2 seasons. So
I don't know why it's the Mercury, but it just happens to be the Mercury. Mary Andrade, who is a player that started 18 games for the Rockers this season, was a Portuguese forward who only played in the WNBA for a short period of time, but she's currently an assistant coach of the Toronto Raptors, which I thought was interesting. There hasn't been a ton of that where I'm seeing WNBA experienced players shifting to coaching in NBA, but to see that she's like currently in their coaching organization, I think that's pretty neat for her. And then Rashia Brown, who started 22 games this season, she spent all 6 years of her career with the Rockers, but this was the year that she was the biggest focal point on the team. This is where she was really a starter and was actually able to pop. But she actually made more of her impact outside of the WNBA, or not outside of the WNBA, but outside of playing when she became an executive in the WNBA. And she was responsible for helping players transition into society after they were done playing basketball. So she was working in these organizations to like get you a job after you are done, with the thing that you've done for how many years, 30 years of your life. If you're just playing basketball, you need to be able to like join the workforce.
that's cool.
She actually also helped the Silver Stars transition to Las Vegas, where they became the Aces. And she was an early franchise development manager with the Aces once they moved over to Las Vegas. So she was very active, not in the actual sport, but around the front office stuff. I think that's worth noting. Like, she has her own website and everything, and she's a very influential figure in those aspects, which are very important. Something that we're not going to really talk about on the podcast because we're talking about the game of basketball, but it's important that these women have access to that stuff when they're ready to hang it up, because unfortunately the league doesn't compensate them the way that the NBA does. They can't just afford to just fall back on their money. They got to go find something else.
True.
So big ups to Rashia Brown for all that she has given to the WNBA, even if it just wasn't on the court. And I mentioned that year they did return to the playoffs. They made it to the conference final in this case and lost to New York.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Because Progressive offers discounts for paying in full, owning a home, and more. Plus, you can count on their great customer service to help you when you need it, so your dollar goes a long way. Visit Progressive.com to see if you could save on car insurance. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states or situations.
O'Reilly. Check engine light on? Take the guesswork out of your check engine light with O'Reilly Veriscan. It's free and provides a report with solutions based on over 650 million vehicle scans verified by ASE certified master technicians. And if you need help, we can recommend a shop for you. Ask for O'Reilly Veriscan today. O'Reilly Auto Parts.
When you think about businesses that are selling through the roof, like Aloe or Skims, sure, you think about a great product, a cool brand, and brilliant marketing. But an often overlooked secret is actually the businesses behind the business, making selling and for shoppers, buying simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. Nobody does selling better than Shopify. With Shop Pay, that boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning way less carts are going abandoned and way more sales happening. So if you're into growing your business, your commerce platform better be ready to sell whatever your customers are scrolling or strolling on the web, in your store, in their feed, and everywhere in between. Businesses that sell more sell on Shopify. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout Skims uses. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/Westwood1, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/Westwood1 to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/Westwood1.
We move to 2001, and this is where we see the high watermark. This is where they go 22-10. Good for, I believe, second best in the WNBA that year because the Comets were still really good. But in this case, they lose in the conference semifinals because now there's a bunch of new teams. So there are more rounds. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of a shame because this is the best they've done in team history, and they can't even make it to the conference final, let alone challenge for a championship.
Well, it happens. That's the playoffs.
It is. and no really significant change to the players that I mentioned. A couple new names, not any major contributors. But the key figure of note was that their defense only allowed 55.9 points per game that season, which is crazy. Mm-hmm. So they're only 56 points in any modern basketball game. This is 2001, but still modern enough. You should be able to score more than 56 points in 40 minutes. It's the record that still stands from this Cleveland team. There's never been a better statistical defense in just pure opponent point scoring than this Rockers team, which is why they were able to go to 22-10. But then they just flame out in the playoffs because I'm sure maybe
defense doesn't win championships then.
It does in certain cases. In basketball, I don't think defense really wins championships. I think it's more offense. In other sports, might be different. 2002, their record flips again. They were 22-10 in 2001. Now they're 10-22.
Really?
In 2002. Second worst in the W. Key person of note in the team now is Penny Taylor. And when I'm doing research for this, I'm like, Penny Taylor, that's a name that I've heard before. What do I know about Penny Taylor? And I was like, wow, she had, a really good WNBA career. She played until 2016, mostly with the Mercury. Really, how do I know Penny Taylor? And then this afternoon, in just refreshing my memory because I took these notes a while ago, it's duh, Penny Taylor is the wife of Diana Taurasi. It was staring me right in the face, and I just completely forgot.
Yeah.
Penny Taylor won 3 championships with the Mercury. We're not talking about Rockers anymore. All of which were Diana Taurasi's championships. Pretty sick. She was a FIBA MVP in 2006, and her number was retired in Phoenix. So she was a pretty huge figure. And I've seen a lot of discourse about how she's a really underrated player and that she doesn't get as much attention because she was a player that was both really good in the W and international. Her and Diana, we just talked a ton about Diana Taurasi last week. You should go back and listen to that as we talk about her retirement. But I felt like such an idiot that I was like, yeah, I know who Penny Taylor is. I should have known and should have made more of an aha moment when it happened. But Penny Taylor, one of the better players to ever be on the Rockers, even if she wasn't great as a Rocker, but great in the WNBA.
That's cool.
Yeah. She started 26 games, averaged 12.9 points per game, 5.3 rebounds, 2.3 assists. She was a good player.
Good.
She's a good player.
I didn't know that her jersey is retired in Phoenix.
Yep, number 13.
So now both of their jerseys will be retired in Phoenix. That's cute.
Pretty cute.
Yeah.
Pretty cute.
Oh, so cute.
Love that. And one more year for the Cleveland Rockers in 2003. Like the Portland Fire, they go 500, 17 and 17. They do make the playoffs, and they lose again in the conference semifinals. So no championship for the Cleveland Rockers in their short existence in the WNBA ecosystem. Might change when they come back. One last player that I want to focus on, LaToya Thomas, a player that starts 25 games. She was the number 1 overall pick in the draft that year, because remember, they went 10 and 22, so they were fortunate enough to get the number 1 overall pick. And she was a pretty decent player in the 5 years that she was on the W. Not anything particularly flashy, but she mostly excelled as a college player. She was really good in college, and she's just another one of these players that was like so great in college, but enters the W and doesn't exactly live up to what was expected of her as that first overall pick. I feel like we've seen that some years. Now it's like the number 1 overall pick the last couple of years have been really good. Aaliyah Boston, Caitlin Clark. It wasn't always a sure thing. Yeah. So LaToya Thomas, not necessarily a player that lives up to what they were expecting when they took her number 1 overall in that 2003 draft. So the gist for the Rockers, pretty decent team. They made the playoffs 4 out of 6 seasons. They had a lot of different players come in and out of their squad, and they never really hit it big with some of the W's early talent. They did appear to be decent, a decently run franchise, because they had success in the years that they were bad. They were immediately able to get back to contention, meaning they were smart in if they were tanking that they could flip the switch and go back. So I can imagine why the appetite is pretty excited in Cleveland. So just to like close, I do feel like that there's been a lot of excitement, a lot more than I saw when even like Portland was talked about for Cleveland. I feel like a lot of people are excited that Cleveland is coming back, and I don't know, right now the Cavs are maybe the best team in the NBA. So it's probably worthwhile that they're joining the WNBA, ecosystem. But who's to say what's going to happen with the Cleveland Rockers when they join the WNBA? Do you feel like, a redesign, maybe some new colors, and, a good draft, an interesting draft to some players that you like could make Cleveland a team that you would enjoy watching? Or you think you're always just going to be hung up by the fact that they are the Cleveland Rockers?
I'll get over it. I think it will be exciting. It'll be exciting to have these new teams into the W that haven't won a championship, because then I'll be rooting for them, because last year we had the Liberty that had never won, and they won this year, and that was exciting. So we will have these 4 new teams that we'll be rooting for. Well, my question going back is, why did the Rockers fold? They just wanted to sell and they couldn't.
Unfortunately, it's the same thing that happened with the Fire. Declining attendance, financial issues. They just said, nah, nope. It's like, I don't think it would happen now.
No.
Because some other rich person would just say, I will buy that. Like, the WNBA is successful enough in 2025 that if any of the current 13 teams was in danger of folding, they would either get moved or they would either get bought out with a ton of extra cash to become competitive again. We talk about Connecticut and like some of the issues that they have with not providing enough for their players. And like, that's the one that I feel like is in the most in danger. But even there, they've talked about maybe moving to Boston. So like, I don't foresee, and I can't really think of the last time in any of these major U.S. sports that a franchise has folded. It's either like the league entirely folds. The WNBA is not in danger.
No, I don't think that will happen. I think mostly because now the media and the television networks are showing the games and people are getting excited.
Right.
Back then, like, it was just a way for the NBA to make some extra money in the summer.
Right.
They didn't care about airing the games.
Right.
Or getting people to come, really. So it was like, oh, this is folding, whatever. But now it's like, now people love it, and now people are invested, and you can watch games on TV.
Right.
And brands are much more interested in investing. So, and with social media, like, no, they'll be fine.
Right. And with how successful even last year was, that's going to propel, the Valkyries' excitement. It's really hard to get a ticket to the Valkyries. It's going to be hard to get a ticket to Toronto and Portland as they join the WNBA. And I'm glad that Kathy E is thinking about making the league 18 teams now, because I feel like it's worth it to consider it. After how this year went, this last year, and how I expect this upcoming year to go, it's worth it to get there, to grow.
Yeah, and like, you could have some hesitation in that you don't want to get too big too fast again, because we did this already in the 2000s.
Hadn't had anybody expand since 2008.
Right, we did this, and it resulted in many of the teams folding. But I think the landscape is completely different now.
It was way different.
Now, I think you need to capitalize on it and get them started before people perhaps, move on to the next thing.
Right.
You need to grab more people's attention.
Right, and create a core of popularity in those cities.
Yes, because these teams will stick around, and you want to make sure you are getting the attention that you can get.
Right. Right. So, all this to say, thank you for listening to a brief history about Portland and Cleveland, two teams that will be joining us again very soon. Apologies for any player name that I mispronounced, because it's a lot of new names for me that I'm trying my best to learn. I will say that we're going to talk about the other teams throughout probably the month of March and into April. We're hoping to be through all of this before the actual WNBA season starts. But with college basketball and everything, we might not necessarily go right into talking about Houston, which is our next one that we have planned. But I just hope you enjoyed it, learning about some new people that you had never heard of. And maybe you want to dig deeper on some of these players that I mentioned today. But you're welcome to do that. If you have any extra facts that you would love me to know about any of these players that I talked about today, you can send us an email, attackthebaseline@gmail.com, or send us a DM on Insta or on Bluesky. Just want to thank you again for following the show and being willing to learn about the WNBA with us. Kristen, do you have anything else for our lovely listeners before we send it off for the end of the week's episode?
No, nothing. Have a good week.
Yeah, hope you all have a good week.
Get ready for March Madness. Hope you're starting to fill out some brackets.
And there'll be a very special bracket that we'll do for the pod that I won't talk about yet, but we're looking forward to that. But yeah, just enjoy your March. Enjoy the end of Unrivaled. Championships coming up soon. Listen to that pod too. And Kristen, I'm staring at the baseline. Well, what are we going to do?
Attack it.
Attack the baseline. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll be back next week to talk more WNBA goodness. Till then, for now.